What did the ICC Appeals Chamber decide today in the Bemba case?
Today, 8th of June 2018, the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court found errors that have affected the decision of Trial Chamber 3 convicting Mr. Bemba. The Appeals Chamber concluded by majority that Trial Chamber 3 had erroneously convicted Mr. Bemba for specific criminal acts that were outside the scope of the case, and that the proceedings in relation to these acts must be discontinued. The Appeals Chamber also found that Mr. Bemba cannot be held criminally liable under Article 28 of the ICC Rome Statute for the remaining crimes committed by the MLC troops during the Central African Republic operation, and that he must be acquitted thereof because the trial chamber had made serious errors in its findings that Mr. Bemba had failed to take all necessary and reasonable measures to prevent or repress the crimes of the MLC troops. Therefore, the Appeals Chamber, by majority, considered it was appropriate to reverse this conviction and enter an acquittal. The Appeals Chamber also dismissed as moot the appeals that Mr. Bemba and the prosecutor had brought against the sentence that Trial Chamber 3 had imposed.
Can this decision be appealed?
No. The judgment of the Appeals Chamber cannot be appealed. The acquittal is final.
Why did the judges decide to acquit Mr. Bemba?
After considering the written and oral arguments of the parties and participants, the Appeals Chamber found, by majority, that Trial Chamber 3 made errors on two important issues. First, it had erroneously convicted Mr. Bemba for specific criminal acts that were outside the scope of the charges as confirmed. Second, the Trial Chamber made serious errors in its assessment of whether Mr. Bemba took all necessary and reasonable measures to prevent or repress the commission of the other crimes by his subordinates, or to submit the matter to the competent authorities. More specifically, the Trial Chamber erred in its evaluation of Mr. Bemba's motivation and the measures that he could have taken in light of the limitations he faced in investigating and prosecuting crimes as a remote commander sending troops to a foreign country, in whether he made efforts to refer the allegations of crimes to the Central African Republic's authorities, and in whether he intentionally limited the mandate of commissions and inquiries that he established. Furthermore, in view of the Appeals Chamber, the Trial Chamber erred in basing its assessment of the reasonableness of the measures Mr. Bemba took on the totality of crimes allegedly committed by the MLC, whereas only a limited number of these crimes were proved beyond reasonable doubt. As a result, the Appeals Chamber decided, by majority, to acquit Mr. Bemba from the charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Will Mr. Bemba remain in ICC detention?
The Appeals Chamber decided that there is no reason to continue Mr. Bemba's detention on the basis of the case related to alleged crimes in the Central African Republic. However, Mr. Bemba is also being detained in connection with a conviction for offenses against the administration of justice, which was recently confirmed by the Appeals Chamber. This conviction related to corruptly influencing defense witnesses and soliciting their false testimonies. Trial Chamber 7 is currently deciding on Mr. Bemba's sentence for that conviction. As a result, Mr. Bemba is not released immediately despite today's acquittal. It is for Trial Chamber 7 to decide whether Mr. Bemba's continued detention is warranted in relation to the case concerning offenses against the administration of justice.
When will the Trial Chamber 7, in the other case, make a decision on next steps in the other case against Mr. Bemba before the ICC?
Trial Chamber 7 is tasked with deciding on the sentence in the case against Mr. Bemba and 4 other individuals for offenses against the administration of justice. It is for Trial Chamber 7 to decide as a matter of urgency whether Mr. Bemba's continued detention is warranted in relation to this case. There are no indications at this moment on when Trial Chamber 7 will issue its decisions on these 2 points. As soon as any of these decisions is issued or scheduled for delivery, they will be announced publicly.
Can Mr. Bemba request provisional release?
Yes, Mr. Bemba may request provisional or interim release to Trial Chamber 7. It would be for this chamber to eventually decide on such a request.
What will happen to the victims who are participating or expecting reparations in this case?
According to the court's jurisprudence, the ICC can order reparations when accused persons are convicted. However, Mr. Bemba's acquittal does not prevent the Trust Fund for Victims, which is a separate and independent institution within the Rome Statute system, from considering providing support to the victims under its assistance mandate, even in the absence of a judicially ordered reparation.
Can Mr. Bemba request compensation for the time spent in detention?
According to Article 85.3 of the Rome Statute, in exceptional circumstances, where the court finds conclusive facts showing that there has been a grave and manifest miscarriage of justice, it may, in its discretion, award compensation to an acquitted person who has been in detention. Should a request to that effect be submitted, it will be for the court to verify this criteria and to decide at its discretion whether or not to order compensation for the time spent in detention.